Hey guys, the year is 1840. You are thousands of miles from the nearest coastline. You are thousands of miles from home. Tonight we leave the solid ground behind. We leave the noise of the cities, the glare of the screens, and the relentless pace of modern life. We are going to drift back to a time when the world was vast, silent, and slow. We are stepping onto the deck of a 19th century whaling ship. This is not a story of high adventure or glorious battles. This is the story of the Long Watch. It is a story of wood, wind, and water. It is a story about the spaces between the events, the months of waiting, the rhythm of the waves, and the deep, heavy atmosphere of a life lived entirely at sea. So take a deep breath. Let the tension in your shoulders release. Imagine the gentle, rhythmic rocking of the floor beneath you. Let us begin our voyage into the quiet. Your journey begins not on the open deck where the wind blows fresh, but below it. You descend into the forecastle, the crew assist quarters at the very front of the ship. To truly understand this life, you must first understand the space. It is a small, triangular room, shaped by the narrowing bow of the vessel. There are no windows here, no portholes to watch the sea. The only light comes from a sputtering oil lamp, swinging gently from a central beam. And the first thing that hits you is the air. It is a physical presence, a thick, heavy atmosphere that feels like it has been trapped here for decades. It is a complex, layered scent. First, there is the smell of the ship itself, damp oak timber that has soaked up 40 years of Atlantic and Pacific saltwater. It is a musty, organic smell, like a wet forest floor, but sharper. Then there is the acrid tang of cheap tobacco smoke, hanging in a blue haze near the ceiling. There is the musk of 20 men living in close quarters, their wool clothes permanently damp, drying slowly in the humid air. But underneath it all, binding every other scent together, is the smell of the ship's purpose, whale oil. It is sweet, heavy, and cloying. It has soaked into the floorboards. It has soaked into the wooden walls. It has even soaked into the straw of your mattress. It is a scent that coats the back of your throat, a reminder that you are living inside a machine designed for one thing. You find your bunk. It is not a bed. It is merely a wooden shelf built against the curved wall of the hull. It is narrow, barely 2 feet wide, coffin-like. When you climb in and lie down, your nose is only inches from the deck planks above you. The wood is rough against your hand. There is no privacy here. You are surrounded by the sounds of others, the rustle of a coarse blanket, the rhythmic breathing of a sleeping sailor, the scratching of a pen on paper. But loudest of all is the sound of the water. Just inches from your head on the other side of the oak planks, the ocean rushes by. You can hear the slap, the hiss, and the gurgle of the waves against the hull. It is a constant, rushing white noise, a reminder of the fragile barrier between your warm, dry world and the cold, crushing deep. This dark, frowsy den is your home. This is where you will sleep. This is where you will think. This is where you will wait. Morning comes early. Before the sun has even hinted at the horizon, a heavy boot thuds on the deck above your head. 3 sharp knocks. You climb up the ladder, out of the warm, thick air of the forecastle, and into the grey, cold mist of the Pacific dawn. If you thought life at sea was filled with constant action, you learn quickly that it is actually defined by maintenance. It is a life of cleaning. Your day begins with the holy stone. Imagine a large block of sandstone, heavy and rough, like a Bible made of rock. Your task is to scrub the wooden planks of the deck. You get on your knees. You wet the wood with buckets of salt water hauled up from the ocean, and you push the stone back and forth, back and forth. The sound is a rhythmic grinding, shh, clack, shh, clack, shh, clack. You do this for hours. You scour away the salt, the slime, the grease, and the footprints of yesterday. It is mindless work. Your hands grow cold and raw from the brine, but your mind drifts into a trance. The repetition becomes a form of meditation. You watch the grain of the wood turn white and clean under your hands. When the scrubbing is done, the day settles into a slow drift. You might be set to picking oakum. You sit on a coil of rope in the shade of a sail. You take old, tar-covered lines, pieces of rope that are too frayed to use, and you pick them apart, fiber by fiber, strand by strand. You tease the hemp loose until it is a pile of fluffy, tar-smelling wool. This will be jammed into the seams of the ship to keep it watertight. It is quiet work. Your fingers turn black with tar. The only sound is the wind whistling softly in the rigging and the creaking of the masts. And then there is the food, the ritual of sustenance. You sit on a wooden chest for dinner. You're handed a piece of hardtack. It is a biscuit, but the name implies a softness that does not exist. It is a tile of baked flour and water, dried until it is as hard as a brick. To eat it, you must break it with a heavy object or soak it in your coffee until it softens into a paste. It tastes of nothing but flour and thyme. You eat it alongside salt junk, beef or pork that has been preserved in brine for so long it has turned gray and hard as mahogany. The salt stings your tongue. You eat quickly, you work slowly, and above all, you wait. You stand your watch, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Your sleep is always broken, chopped into small segments. You never truly rest. You exist in a state of permanent, low-level exhaustion, moving in rhythm with the bells that mark the passing of time in a world without clocks. But there are moments when the monotony breaks, not with the thrill of a battle, but with the heavy, sweating reality of industry. When a whale is caught, the ship transforms. It ceases to be a vessel of navigation and becomes a floating factory. This is the process known as trying out. Brick furnaces built directly onto the wooden deck are lit. Iron cauldrons, large enough for a man to sit inside, begin to bubble and hiss. The work continues day and night, ignoring the sun and the moon. Darkness is banished by the light of the fires. The fuel for these flames is the whale itself, the fritters, or crisp scraps of blubber that have already been boiled. The ship consumes what it hunts. You stand on the deck, but the wood is no longer white and clean. It is slick with grease. It is treacherous footing. One slip could send you sliding across the planks. You wield a long-handled spade, slicing the blanket pieces, long, heavy strips of blubber, into smaller sections called Bible leaves. They are called this because they are sliced thin, like the pages of a book, but left attached at the spine to increase their surface area. You toss these leaves into the boiling pots. The smell changes instantly. The damp, musty smell of the forecastle is replaced by the heavy, overpowering scent of boiling oil. It is a thick, fatty smoke that seems to have weight. It coats everything. If you look up, the sails, usually white canvases catching the wind, are illuminated from below by the hellish orange glow of the try-works. The smoke blackens the rigging. It blackens your face. You can feel the soot settling into the pores of your skin. Even your eyes feel gritty. For days, the fires do not go out. You work in shifts, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. You stir the bubbling oil with long poles. You ladle it into cooling tanks. You pour it into wooden casks. The cooper is there, hammering the iron hoops tight. Bang, bang, bang. The sound rings out over the empty ocean. Finally, the last scrap is boiled. The fires are allowed to die down. The pots cool. And then, the scrubbing begins again. You wash the soot from the deck with sand and water. You scour the pots. You scrub the grease from your own skin, though the smell will linger for weeks. And then, silence returns. The ship is clean. The oil is stowed below in the dark. The rhythm of the Holy Stone returns. You are back in the drift, waiting for the next interruption in the endless, empty blue. Now let us drift away from the general routine of the fleet and focus on a specific moment in time. A moment that haunts the history of Nantucket to this day. The year is 1820. The ship is the Essex. She is an old ship, small but known for her luck. Her timbers have soaked up the salt of the Atlantic and the Pacific for 20 years. She is commanded by Captain George Pollard Jr., a young man only 29 years old. Yet he carries himself with the quiet, heavy weight of authority. It is November. The Essex is cruising the offshore grounds, thousands of miles west of South America. It is a perfect day. The sun is warm, the wind is gentle, and the ocean stretches out like a sheet of hammered blue glass. The boats are lowered to chase a pod of whales, but one whale behaves differently. It is a massive male sperm whale, 85 feet long, a creature of immense power, scarred by battles in the deep. It does not flee, it turns. From the deck of the Essex, the cabin boy watches in confusion. He sees the gray shape moving through the water, gathering speed. There is no noise yet, just the silent driving force of 80 tons of muscle pushing through the sea. The impact, when it comes, is not like a cannon blast. It is a deep, shuddering thud that vibrates through every plank of the ship. It feels as if the ship has struck a solid rock in the middle of the deep ocean. Men are knocked off their feet. Dishes slide across the tables below. The wood groans in protest. Then, silence returns. The whale swims off, stunned, but it turns again. It strikes a second time, this time with a calculated fury, crushing the bow, the front of the ship. What happens next is not a panic, but a slow, surreal realization. The water begins to enter. It is not a violent rush, but a steady, unstoppable rising. The Essex, the only solid ground these men have known for over a year, begins to settle. The air trapped inside forces its way out with a low, mournful whistle. The crew works with the mechanical efficiency of shock. They do not scream, they move. They rush into the cabins. They grab navigational instruments. They grab a little bread. They grab a little water. They grab a few turtles they had kept for food, and then they lower the remaining whaleboats. As they push away, they stop rowing. They turn back to watch. The Essex does not explode. She simply becomes heavy. She settles lower and lower into the water. The sea reaches the deck, then the rails, and finally, with a soft gurgle, the ship disappears. The horizon is suddenly empty. The barrier between the men and the elements is gone. They are no longer sailors on a fortress of oak. They are castaways in 3 wooden shells, floating in the center of the largest ocean on Earth. Imagine the silence that follows. 20 men, 3 boats. The nearest land is the Marquesas Islands to the west. But Captain Pollard, fearing rumors of dangerous tribes, makes a decision that will seal their fate. He decides to sail east, against the wind, against the currents, towards South America. It is a journey of nearly 3,000 miles. Thus begins the Great Drift. In the beginning, there is a sense of purpose, but the ocean has a way of eroding hope, just as it erodes stone. The days begin to bleed into one another. The sun becomes their primary tormentor. There is no shade in a whaleboat. From the moment it rises, it beats down with a relentless physical weight. It reflects off the water, creating a world of blinding white light. It burns the skin, it cracks the lips, and then the thirst. The water rations are meager, a half cup a day. It is enough to keep the organs functioning, but not enough to stop the suffering. Your mouth becomes dry as cotton. Your tongue swells until it fills your mouth. Speech becomes difficult and then impossible. The men stop talking. They save their breath. They simply sit, staring at the blue line where the sky meets the sea. They sit, knee to knee, in the cramped boat. There is no room to stretch. The wooden planks dig into their spines. The boat rocks up and down, an endless, nauseating cradle that never stops. At night, the temperature plummets. The men, soaked in spray and sweat, shiver in the darkness. They huddle together for warmth, a tangled mass of limbs in the bottom of the boat, trying to sleep while the ocean hisses inches from their ears. But mostly, there is just the waiting. Captain Pollard watches his men. He sees the light in their eyes begin to dim. He sees the calms, the days when the wind dies completely, the sails hang limp, the ocean becomes a mirror, perfectly still. The boats do not move. They sit there, pinned to the surface of the water like insects in amber. In these moments, time stretches. An hour feels like a day. A day feels like a lifetime. The mind, starved of stimulation, begins to turn inward. You start to dream while you are awake. You hear church bells ringing underwater. You see green fields on the horizon that vanish when you blink. The discipline of the ship dissolves. There is no rank here anymore. There is only the biology of survival. the slow metabolic fading of the human body. Weeks turn into months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. The boats become separated in a storm. Now, let us focus on Captain Pollard's boat. The suffering has reached a point where the boundaries of civilized life have eroded completely. The hardtack is gone, the turtles are gone, the water is gone, nature is indifferent. The sun rises and sets with beautiful, cruel regularity. In the boat, the men are no longer truly men. They are skeletons wrapped in parchment-like skin. They drift in a state of semi-consciousness, their eyes fixed on nothing. When one man passes away, his body is not committed to the deep. The survival instinct, ancient and terrible, takes over. We will not dwell on the details of what happens in the open ocean. It is enough to say that the living are sustained by the dead. It is a grim communion, a desperate, sorrowful act to buy one more day of life. But even this is not enough. There comes a moment, the darkest moment of the voyage, when the living must decide who will die so that the others may remain. Straws are drawn. It is a lottery of doom. A shot rings out across the water, and then the silence returns. Captain Pollard bears witness to it all. He sees the lights go out in the eyes of his crew, one by one. The burden of command in this open boat is not about giving orders. It is about carrying the collective grief. It is about keeping the boat pointed east, even when east seems like a myth. 90 days. For 90 days, they drift. When they are finally found by another ship, the Dauphin, they are barely recognizable. They are found clutching the bones of their shipmates. They are hollow shells, forged by the sun and the salt. They are hauled up onto the deck of the rescue ship. They are given water. They are given food. But something in them remains adrift. Captain Pollard survives. He returns to Nantucket. He eventually takes command of another ship, but he runs it aground. The sea has rejected him. He spends the rest of his life on land, working as a night watchman. Imagine him, an old man walking the cobblestone streets of Nantucket in the dark, listening to the sound of the ocean in the distance. The silence of the drift never truly leaves him. How does the human mind survive when the world shrinks to 100 feet of woods surrounded by an endless, flat horizon, when the decks are scrubbed and the whales are gone and the ship is merely drifting? What fills the silence? The answer lies in the art of patience. Down in the dim light of the forecastle, when the oil lamps are trimmed low, the men turn to scrimshaw. It is a delicate art born from the roughest of circumstances. It is the only art form in history created purely out of boredom. Imagine a sailor sitting on his sea chest. In his hand he holds the tooth of a sperm whale. It is hard, white, and smooth as glass. With a simple jackknife or perhaps a sharp sail needle, he begins to scratch. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is barely audible. It is a slow, microscopic erosion. He is not just carving. He is etching a memory into the bone. He might carve a picture of the ship, counting every sail and every rope. He might carve a portrait of a wife he hasn't seen in 2 years, trying to remember the exact line of her jaw. He might carve a vine of flowers, a memory of a garden he once walked through in New England. The work is impossibly slow. The bone resists the steel. Once the lines are cut, he rubs them with a mixture of lamp black, soot collected from the chimney of the oil lamp, or perhaps tobacco juice. He wipes it away and the black stain remains in the scratches, making the image leap out from the white ivory. This is not just a hobby, it is an anchor. A single intricate piece of scrimshaw might take 6 months to complete. Think about that. 6 months of focus on a single object. Each line represents an hour of focus. Each shaded area represents a week of silence. It is a meditation in bone and ink. It is a way to prove that time is passing, even when every day looks exactly the same. But the silence of the ocean breeds other things besides art. In the absence of news, in the absence of logic, the mind begins to look for patterns. Superstition takes root like moss on a damp stone. Sailors are practical men. They know knots and currents and winds. Yet they live in a world governed by unseen forces. Out here there is no weather forecast. There is only luck. You learn to read the signs. A hatch cover turned upside down is not just a mistake. It is an invitation for disaster. A bucket lost overboard is an omen. Whistling on deck is forbidden. You do not taunt the wind, or it might answer with a gale. It has a wingspan of 10 feet, yet it never seems to flap its wings. It simply rides the air currents, following the ship for days, silent and watchful. To the sailor, this is not just a bird. It is a wandering soul, perhaps the soul of a captain lost at sea. To harm one is to invite the wrath of the ocean itself. You watch them with a mixture of reverence and fear. And when the luck turns bad, when the fog rolls in and stays for weeks, or when the whales vanish, eyes start to dart around the crew. They whisper about the Jonah. A Jonah is a man who brings misfortune, a man cursed by nature. Who is the anomaly? Who came aboard right before the luck ran dry? It is a quiet paranoia that drifts through the ship like a cold draft. It isolates men even further, making them watchful of each other in the cramped darkness of the forecastle. But the greatest fear is not the storm. It is the calm. To be becalmed in the hoarse latitudes is a torture. The sea becomes flat. The sails hang heavy and useless. The ship stops. You are trapped in a blue circle. The silence becomes so loud it rings in your ears. You throw a wood chip overboard, and an hour later it is still floating right next to the hull. This is when the superstitions become prayers. But there is one event that breaks this isolation. One moment that is celebrated more than Christmas, more than any birthday. The gam. Imagine scanning the horizon for weeks, seeing nothing but the endless play of light on water. And then, one afternoon, a speck appears. White sails, another ship. As the vessels draw closer, a signal flag is raised. They are not passing, they are stopping. The ships heave to, drifting side by side on the gentle swell, perhaps a quarter-mile apart. Whaleboats are lowered, but this time there are no harpoons. They are rowing for a visit. For a few hours the wooden world expands. The captains meet in one cabin to exchange old newspapers and discuss the location of the whales. The crews mix on the decks. It is a sensory shock. You hear new voices. You see faces you haven't memorized. You trade tobacco. You trade stories. Where are you from? How long have you been out? 30 months, one man says. 40 months, says another. But most importantly, you trade letters. This is the post office of the Pacific. A ship you meet might be heading home to Nantucket while you still have 2 years left to serve. You hand over a bundle of letters, words written to mothers, wives, and children, hoping that this stranger will carry your voice back to the world of the living. And sometimes, if you are lucky, they have news for you. But the news is strange. It is a ghost of the past. They tell you of wars that may have already ended. They tell you of elections that happened a year ago. You discuss these events calmly, turning over the history of the world that has happened without you. You are time travelers, catching up on a life that feels like a dream. Then the sun begins to set. The light turns golden. The boats return to their mother ships. The sails are braced. The ships begin to drift apart. The gap widens. The faces of the strangers become blurs and then specks. The silence returns. The circle of the horizon closes in once again, and you are left with your knife, your whale tooth, and the long, long watch ahead. While you have been drifting in the Pacific, a world has continued to turn without you. Let us transport ourselves back to the source, back to the island of Nantucket. If the ship is a factory of noise, smell, and constant motion, Nantucket is a cathedral of silence. This is a Quaker island. The people here belong to the Society of Friends. They dress in plain clothes, sober grays, deep browns, and black. They do not believe in ostentatious displays. They do not wear jewelry. They do not sing music in their services. And yet, this is one of the richest places on the face of the earth. Imagine walking down Main Street. The first thing you notice is the ground beneath your feet. It is solid. It does not pitch. It does not roll. It feels strange, almost dead compared to the living, breathing deck of a ship. The streets are paved with round cobblestones. These stones were not found here. They were brought over as ballast in the empty holds of ships returning from Europe. You are walking on the weight of the world's trade. The houses are large, square, and imposing. They are built with the profits of the oil you are hunting, but they are not ornate. They are severe. But there is a heaviness here, a sense of permanent waiting. Walk up to the rooftops. Nearly every great house has a wooden platform built onto the peak of the roof, surrounded by a white railing. They call them widows' walks. It is a cruel name, but an accurate one. Women stand there for hours, their shawls wrapped tight against the Atlantic wind, looking out over the harbor, scanning the horizon for a sail that might not appear for years. The silence of the island is different from the silence of the sea. At the Quaker Meeting House on a Sunday morning, hundreds of people sit together on hard wooden benches. There is no priest, there is no sermon, there is no choir. They sit in absolute silence, waiting for the inner light, waiting for the Spirit to move them to speak. You can hear the creaking of the wood, the rustle of a dress, the wind outside. It is a disciplined, severe silence. The oil you harvest lights the lamps of London, Paris, and Vienna, pushing back the darkness of the modern world. But here at the source of that light, life is lived in the shadows of modesty. Because the men are gone for 4 or 5 years at a time, Nantucket has become a unique anomaly in the 19th century world. It is a society run almost entirely by women. They call it the petticoat aristocracy. While the men are the kings of the sea, struggling with the elements, the women are the governors of the land. Imagine the daily life of a whaling captain's wife. She is not merely keeping a home. She is not just waiting. She is managing a complex business empire. While her husband is chasing whales in the Japan grounds, she is walking into the counting houses on the wharf. She deals with merchants. She haggles over the price of supplies. She balances the accounts. She authorizes repairs to property. She makes investment decisions that will determine the family's future for generations. She is independent, capable, and powerful. In a time when women in other parts of the world are treated as dependents, the women of Nantucket are the CEOs of the island's economy. When you, the sailor, dream of home during your night watch, you dream of a place where you are the head of the household. But the reality you return to is different. You are a guest in your own home. The island functions perfectly without you. The economy hums along. The decisions are made. The children are educated. You are the engine that funds this life, the laborer in the distance. But you are not the driver. This social structure creates a strange emotional distance. The letters you receive in the Pacific are practical. They do not speak of longing and romance. They speak of the price of oil, of the repairs to the roof, of the neighbor's health. They are the reports of a partner to an absent shareholder. The romance of the return is often a story told by those who have never left. For those who live it, the separation is a business arrangement as much as a marriage. And finally, the day comes. The lookout spots the lighthouse of Nantucket. The anchor is dropped. The voyage is over. You have been gone for 4 years. You step off the boat, and the first thing you feel is sickness. They call it land sickness. Your inner ear has adjusted to the constant rhythmic motion of the waves for 1,500 days. Now the earth feels like it is swaying violently beneath you. You stumble on the flat stones. The world feels too rigid, too hard, too unyielding. You walk up the street to your house. The sensory overload is dizzying. The trees look strange. You haven't seen a tree, a vertical object that doesn't move, in years. The smell of the earth, dirt, wet grass, horse manure, coal smoke, is overwhelming after years of breathing nothing but sterile salt air and oil. You open your front door. There is a child standing there, a boy of 5. He looks at you with fear. He does not know who you are. You left when he was an infant. To him, father is a word in a letter, a concept, a ghost. He is not prepared for this weathered, bearded stranger standing in the hallway, smelling of blubber and the sea. Your wife greets you. She is older. There are lines on her face you haven't seen before. Her routine is set. She has her own way of doing things, her own independence. You try to fit back into the puzzle of the family, but your piece has changed shape. You are too rough, too loud, too used to the open space. You sit at the dinner table. The china plates feel delicate, ready to shatter in your rough hands. You use a fork with hesitation. The conversation flows around you. It is about local gossip, who is marrying who, the price of flour, the sermon on Sunday. It seems incredibly small. It seems trivial compared to the vastness of the Pacific, the stars over the equator, the life and death struggle of the drift. You feel a sudden, crushing claustrophobia. The walls of the house feel closer than the walls of the forecastle ever did. The ceiling feels low. You cannot see the horizon. You are home. You are safe. You are wealthy. But late at night, when the house is quiet, you catch yourself looking out the window, past the garden, past the church steeple, toward the gray line of the harbor. You miss the rhythm. You miss the simplicity of the long watch. You realize that while you have survived the ocean, a part of you, the part that learned to find peace in the boredom, has remained out there, drifting in the deep. And so, the cycle continues. The barrels are unloaded. The oil is sold. It travels to the great cities of the world. It is poured into street lamps in London. It is poured into lighthouse beacons on the coast of France. It burns with a bright, clean yellow flame. When people in the 19th century looked at a lit lamp, they saw progress. They saw safety. They saw civilization pushing back the night. But they did not see the ship. They did not smell the smoke of the try-works. They did not feel the crushing boredom of the doldrums, or the silent terror of the drift. They did not know the cost of the light. Tonight, as you lie in the comfort of the dark, remember that history is often made in the quiet, uncelebrated spaces. It is made by endurance, it is made by patience, it is made by those who wait. Sleep now. The watch is over. The ocean is calm. Good night.